This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
John and Patrick McEnroe here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, simulcast. We are yet again from New York City on ESPN News. You can tweet at me at Patrick McEnroe. I am still working on getting my big brother John to get a Twitter account. I have been and continue to be unsuccessful in my efforts. You can give us a call, by the way, at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776.
There is a phrase, don't hold your breath.
I've been holding it for a while.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's been around how long? Like 10 years, or is it more than that? I don't know. Whatever
more
it is,
by now.
You know, I've hung in there this far without doing it, and something tells me I may get in a little trouble if I did do it. Better to stay away. I'm feeling great, Patrick. We had a workout. You and I are playing doubles down in Australia when we head down there in the old guys event. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So I feel sharp. We got a workout.
Yep.
I'm all pumped up. The football quarterfinals, what we call quarterfinals, 8 teams left. We call it the quarterfinals in tennis. It's going to be awful interesting.
Well, the wild card weekend was about as good as it could get in the NFL. So we're going to somewhat break down as we can do it. We'll break down a little bit the 4 NFL games. We'll do that momentarily. Let me just lay out the show for it because I know you want to talk a little bit about and they used to be his, literally, New York Knicks. That's Jeff Van Gundy. He's going to join us at about 1:30 today to talk all things NBA and maybe a little New York Knicks as well.
Okay, so he's coming on about 1:30, right?
He's coming on about 1:30.
Because to me, you know, I feel like I'm sort of – I mean, everyone that knows me knows I'm a huge Knick fan, and, you know, I'm trying to hang tough. But I feel
it feels like it's getting a little more difficult for you. I can feel the edge starting to come out a little bit.
Well, the rock is hitting the bottom. It feels like
it's already hit it. By the way,
it's very depressing. So I saw them lose to the Lakers by 30, and then they go and lose by 20 something to the Jazz, and the record now, I believe, at the moment, and I know this is a national audience, but New York is supposed to be the greatest city in the world. I know I'm biased. It is a wonderful place to be. There's an energy unsurpassed in almost any other city in the world.
And certainly Los Angeles is back in a big way in the NBA world with the Clippers, and now the Lakers are back. So I want to get into that with
Thank
Coach
God I have a home in Malibu.
You'll be out there before you head down to Australia. Just to set up hour number 2 for you, we'll have Damian Woody. He'll come on and talk to us about all things NFL. We'll look ahead to the games, the coaching changes that have happened in the last week, and still waiting on the Cleveland Browns and to see where they go. They've got their interview tomorrow with McDaniels from New England.
Maybe he can talk about the offensive line of the Tennessee Titans to see if they were really as good as they looked against the New England Patriots, who supposedly were this great defensive team, and they got pushed around. And I mean, I know this guy Derrick Henry is a great player. He looks like a great player.
Had a hell of a game last week.
He had 180 or 90 yards, incredible. But there were some wide open holes up there in Gillette Stadium as you sat glumly next to the owner was more glum than I was because I'm even worse. Okay,
you were waiting for the celebration.
I'm a Jets fan. Okay,
J-E-T-S,
so something tells me if you were a Patriots fan the last 20 years, you'd be in heaven with the results they've had with 9 Super Bowls. We don't want to hear any sour grapes from anyone. Oh, my God.
We'll talk to Damien, though, and find out if he thinks that old Mr. Brady's coming back. Obviously, Tom Brady sent out his – I know you don't do Twitter, obviously, but nor do you do Instagram. So
nor do I do Facebook.
Nor do you can turn on your phone, though. So
my phone works.
Okay, the phone works.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ESPN app. News here, the ESPN app. I do have that.
You're doing your homework.
I'm getting there.
Okay, so Tom Brady put out on Instagram essentially saying that he wants to come back. He still has a lot more to do. He said. That's what he said.
What does he have to do?
I'm just reporting what he said, that he has a lot more. So, of course, many are speculating, what did he mean by that? That he has a lot more. He's won 6 Super Bowls. So that I guess that's where you were going. So many speculating, did he mean that he wants to leave and do it somewhere else? Or did he mean, as he said numerous times, he wants to play until he's 45, at a high level?
Maybe he wants an NFL team in Africa where they have more than one wife and he can have 10 supermodel wives like Giselle or something. I mean, it's not enough what he's got already?
Apparently not. So
he's doing pretty well. But whatever he wants to do, he should be allowed to do because he's earned it, right?
Yeah, he absolutely has. And apparently he wants to continue to try to earn it. So we'll also dig a little deeper into the NFL with our buddy Howard Bryant, who's a great writer, has a couple books on baseball. He was following that Kaepernick story about a month ago when he had his tryout, and also get into the Rooney rule with him, which I know.
Aren't you worried, by the way, Patrick, when you just mentioned Kaepernick, and that's a whole other issue, but he was a running quarterback that had a lot of success and was in a Super Bowl and an NFL championship game for a couple of years of his career.
Right.
Jim Harbaugh did seem to do a very good job with him, elevating him to a starting position. And obviously this whole issue with him kneeling has been what everyone's talked about. But he was similar, I guess the reason I'm bringing it up, to Lamar Jackson.
Right.
He's been derailed by
Deshaun Watson.
Right. Well, but the point I'm making is how long can these guys last doing this? I mean, I'd say, to me, it's extremely limited. So I'd like to ask any of these NFL insiders if they think that a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's going to win the MVP this year, can do this for more than a year or two.
Well, I think it's a great point, and I think when you talk about even Brady and what Bill Belichick wants to do with speculation that maybe he wants to move to a quarterback that can move, that can get out of the pocket a little more. Obviously, they had Garoppolo; he'll make his first start in the playoffs for San Francisco this weekend, so we'll talk about that as well. But I think these younger players. Russell Wilson to me is a perfect example of a guy that obviously can run, but he can also throw the ball incredibly well. And I think initially when these types of players started coming into the league, your question was spot on, and they were getting hurt and they were getting knocked out quickly. But I think these younger guys are learning now. You see Wilson, he'll slide most of the time now when he's running to not get hurt.
Absolutely.
So I think that these types of quarterbacks have progressed, even just in the last couple of years.
But Jackson's not doing that. I mean, he's trying to run over people right now.
At the moment. But you would guess that over time, he certainly can throw the ball as well.
He should be doing that already, shouldn't he? I mean, this is his second year.
I would say yes.
If he wants to last 10 years in the NFL, to me, I mean, that should be like a no-brainer for the coach. But at any rate, it's been fun to watch him. I mean, he set the all-time record for quarterback and running, and he can throw. So to me, he should be absolutely backing off. But in the meantime, we're watching something special. But we've seen it before, and almost every time the result ends up being bad for that particular quarterback.
Well, how about Kirk Cousins, by the way? Let's go to the first game while we're on this topic. Minnesota at San Francisco, John, in game number 1 on Saturday. Cousins, the knock was he couldn't win the big one. He delivered last weekend, not folding at all under pressure. Unbelievable throw to Thielen and late in the game. And then, of course, a controversial fade to Kyle Rudolph, which, by the way, I do not say was offensive pass interference. A lot of people said it was. I think the NFL is making the right move by letting them. Everybody complained the last couple of years when they said, here's the throw coming up, that these guys weren't letting them play, late in the game. So here's an example where the defender, he was, knocking Rudolph's hands away as well at the same time.
Can we see that one more time? Because he looked like he pushed off to me.
He did push off. But he did push off. But my point is the defender, here it comes again. We got to see these guys are on top of it. That's not the play, but we'll get it. Okay.
Here's the play.
The fact, here it is again.
Watch. Get a little.
No, this is the first. This is the first one that set it up. This is down to the 2.
Oh, we're getting there.
I think we're getting there because it's on a loop.
When we come back from commercial,
there it is. So he throws it up. So the defender's he's grabbing his hand, the defender, right there before he pushed off. So I would think that you, of all people, would say, let him play. Keep the refs out of it.
I'd actually go the complete opposite direction. I would.
You cannot.
I know. That's $5. Right. I would say if the defensive back or corner holds him, penalty, end of story. That way they'd stop doing it. But of course, then the score would be 100-84 every game, which may not be such a bad thing.
Yeah,
I'd like to see a lot of scoring. But.
So the San Francisco defensive line, just so you know, has 5 first-round draft picks on a defensive line led by the rookie Nick Bosa. Garoppolo obviously playing in his first playoff game or starting it. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings, but he was riding the pine with Brady in New England. So this will be his first
learning though.
Learning the trade, yeah.
Which is what I think they should have done with Daniel Jones and the Giants, even though they're claiming that it was the right move to put Eli and bench him. Why did they keep Eli? But that's a whole other story. And by the way, you mentioned Kirk Cousins, who I'm glad he won.
A couple of unbelievable throws.
Well, right? I'm glad he won a playoff game because people get on these guys, and he seems to be an excellent quarterback. I don't know if the monkey's off his back. He won a wild card game.
Well, he's got one. Yeah.
So
your standards are high. Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's not like he's won a Super Bowl or something, right? He won. One
playoff game.
I believe that's the only one. He might have won one other one, but I don't think he's won too many. Do you have that stat?
I don't have that stat. No, I don't think that was his first win.
Can we get whether or not Kirk Cousins has won any other playoff games?
As we're filling in here, by the way, in the Stephen A. Smith Show, and I'm going to mention, John, that Straight Talk Wireless runs on the same 4G LTE networks for up to half the cost. Get the unlimited plan with up to 25 gigs of high-speed data, then 2G for just $45 a month. No contract. Straight Talk Wireless only at Walmart. Time for a bit more straight talk.
What does that say at John McEnroe?
That's like must be a pseudo or something because that's not you.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think we need to do a little work on our graphics.
Because the graphics
There's no such thing.
Is going into a slump here.
There's no Johnny Mac on Twitter. Every time we do a big match at the U.S.
There's
Open,
fake Johnny Mac.
Yeah, there's quite a few actually.
A person, but. That ain't me.
You think it's going to be Garoppolo is going to be the reason they win this game, or is his job to manage the game?
His job has been to manage the entire season, so he's going to continue to do that. And these guys that win these wild card games, they get beat up. That's why it's so difficult to win the Super Bowl when you're only in the wild card game because there's a physical toll and a mental toll that it takes having to even get there. You beat up already a lot of these guys.
Right.
You get that break. That's key for those, like the Niners. They could easily been playing. It came down to like that play up in Seattle.
Made the play at the goal line.
They were like the 1 inch line.
Right.
If they had scored there, then all of a sudden,
they would have been in the wild card.
New Orleans gets the bye. Right. They're out now, so you can see how important that was. New England was. Everyone thought they beat Miami. Well, guess what? They lost to Miami at home.
In the last game of the season.
And then don't worry about it. Now, we'll just step it up. No.
You know what may be the key to San Francisco winning this game, and I think I'm going to surprise you with this. It's a fun fact, okay? They may be the only team in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers, with an emotional support dog. Did you know this?
I didn't know that.
1-year-old French bulldog named Zoe hangs out in the player engagement office is what they call it, and he cuddles with the players.
That's weird.
So it got me thinking, wouldn't it have been great if you and Jimmy Connors had a little good dog that you could have cuddled with? It would have calmed you down out there.
Now
I finally stumped you, okay? Finally.
I think that I don't think you slept last night. If you are sitting there coming up with this, either that or we're really desperate.
I'm doing some serious digging.
As Yogi said, it's getting late early. Because
serious digging. All right, let's go to game number 2. Tennessee at Baltimore. Speaking of Lamar Jackson, okay, so Tennessee dealt with Brady last week. Now they got to deal with Lamar Jackson.
Slightly different.
Little different preparation will be necessary to deal with him.
I'd personally like to see Lamar Jackson do his thing and go all the way just because I'm concerned about how long he's going to – I hope he's 23. He just turned 23 years of age. So the guy looks absolutely outstanding, and it's a breath of fresh air. But,
right.
So I'm hoping that they go all the way and win it because they were talking about getting rid of Harbaugh, I think, a couple of years – I believe. He seems to be one of the best coaches in the NFL. But nonetheless there was talk that maybe his time was up in Baltimore, and then he made sort of a gutsy move, the way Jim Harbaugh did, bringing Kaepernick in.
Right.
You know, Joe Flacco was benched, and Lamar Jackson was brought in. Everyone thought he's green. He's
plenty of people passed on him, right?
Well,
in the draft,
enough people passed on him, and then there was people that said he should be a running back or a wide receiver, not to play quarterback.
I mean, you look at him throwing some of these throws from the pocket. I mean, there's how many guys can throw it as well as he can from not many. And then you add what he can do on the ground.
His
explosive.
Robert Griffin III,
yeah.
He is an example of what we don't want to have happen to Lamar Jackson physically.
Right.
Because you remember that wild card playoff game, I believe it was, when he went back in the game and then blew his knee out, and the guy's never been the same since. And you wonder as a coach, is Mike Shanahan, it reminds me of this Tua guy when Nick Saban put him back in.
Kept him in there, yeah.
And then you feel like he's told by the medical staff, apparently, that he's okay to go back and play. But I'm like, no, I don't think. I mean, I'm no expert, but that doesn't look like he should go back in and play. It's not worth the risk. He's a rookie.
Right.
And now you got a second-year guy. So hopefully what you said in the opening about Lamar Jackson, that they're looking and they're seeing that Russell Wilson's a perfect example of a guy, to me, who knows when to just let it go.
So it sounds like you like
I like Baltimore just because, I think Tennessee's predictable.
Okay.
They're going to try to run the ball, obviously. And so I'm assuming, we'll see, because you hear all these football experts all talk about the offensive and defensive lines. It comes down to who controls the ball in that sense. So to me, if they can do the type of job they did against New England,
with Derrick Henry,
they could cause problems.
But. And if Tannehill can handle the blitz, by the way, Baltimore's the highest blitzing team in the NFL, and Tannehill apparently does pretty well against a blitz. 65% completion rate against a blitz.
How many playoff games has he won?
That would be one.
One?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. He won last
like
week.
that other guy. Exactly.
So we'll see. Hopefully these guys can step up, because they're talking about giving him a big deal and getting rid of Mariota.
No,
this guy's a forgotten man.
I would say that's likely to happen. Sunday game, first game is Houston, Kansas City. A lot of people picking Kansas City to go all the way. I'm actually one of those people. I think they're going to go the distance and win the whole thing. Houston.
You got two great, exciting quarterbacks once again. I mean, they're just, he's seen some. I mean, this is what, honestly, Patrick, this is what we're hoping to see in tennis. I have the ultimate respect for Roger Federer, who I compare to Tom Brady and Nadal and Djokovic, but you want to see, I want to see a young guy win the Australian Open in a couple weeks.
Well, we're going to talk.
I'd like to see Patrick
We're going to talk
Mahomes.
A little tennis, by the way, in hour number 2. We got Craig Tiley, the tournament director.
Who?
Of the Australian Open. Craig Tiley.
The tournament director.
Of the Australian Open, because obviously they're dealing with some serious issues with the bushfires, and there's been some talk about moving some of the matches into the Australian Open, moving the timing of the tournament, and potentially moving some of the matches indoors. So we're going to talk to him in hour number 2. But Houston, KC, obviously Kansas City, a heavy favorite. Deshaun Watson, you expect, is going to have to be on fire. They did beat him earlier this year.
Well, that play he made was amazing in overtime. Wow. Oh, I thought for a second they were going to go right to that play. I'm like,
they're not that good. I mean, they're good up here, but not that good.
But these guys, it's great to see these guys having that type of success. And again, both these guys like to get out there and run, and they both have to be careful as well. I mean, I think Deshaun Watson's had a couple ACL surgeries already. I believe one was in college, and I believe one was in the pros. So you would think that he's somewhat fragile. And Patrick Mahomes, you remember that kneecap went out earlier in the year, and you thought this guy may be gone for the year, and thank God it was only for a month or so. And then they're talking about putting him back in after a couple weeks. You're like, no! Andy Reid, don't do that. You've been around 25 years. But he seems fine, and you got to like Kansas City, to me, though, playing at home. I mean, it does seem to be their time.
Yeah, well, we'll look ahead to that one. The last game will be Seattle at Green Bay. Give me a quick pick, because we got to get to break here in about a minute, John. A quick pick, Seattle. A lot of people are saying Seattle's got the best shot to upset the home team. Green Bay's the home team in this one.
You know, I sort of like to see Aaron Rodgers make one more run.
Right. Well, the last 10 years ago that he won the Super Bowl.
Is it that long ago?
It's that long ago. And he hasn't been in the playoffs in a couple years.
Wilson I love also. So the guy, they're class acts. Okay.
Here's something to think about during this break. Does Rodgers need to win one more to become an all-time great in your mind? When it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste. You need to get to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Your time is precious. Let Indeed help you get to your short list of qualified candidates and discover why more than 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. That's Indeed.com/hire. Jeff Van Gundy will join us when we come back, and we can hear all your thoughts on the NBA and your New York Knicks.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Patrick and John McEnroe here. That last segment brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less only at Walmart. And here's the select quote difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, and one rate, but Select Quote shops and could get you up to 10 options from highly rated life insurance companies. For a free personalized quote, call 800-601-6992 or go to selectquote.com. So now,
well, I'm glad that
you're chomping at the bit over here.
Well, no,
Johnny
I'm
Mac.
glad we have Jeff Van Gundy on the line because this, I feel like I'm approaching, as a big Knicks fan, rock bottom. So there couldn't be a better guy, perhaps a future. I got to ask him. Jeff, are you there, by the way?
I'm here. How's everything, guys?
Everything's great except for New York sports. But besides that, it's, pretty good. My life is good. Thanks for asking. But I want to ask, how about yourself? Happy New Year.
To you, too. Yeah, everything's fine. I just get to comment on games just like you guys do, and I don't have to live with the results. So it's good.
Well, let me ask you about, just because I'm a big Knicks fan, and I'm just looking at their roster right now, and they've got guys like Julius Randle. He's making $18.9 million. And listen, I want the players to get as much as they possibly can get. There's no question about it. I'm an ex-athlete. I get it. But for this type of money, look at Marcus Morris. He's the best Knick we got. He's $15 million. Bobby Porter's $15 million. Taj Gibson, $10 million. I don't need to go any further than that. But what is going on? Someone's got to be held responsible for what's happening with the Knicks. Am I correct there, Jeff? Help me out here.
Well, I think what happened, and I, like you guys, I'm a huge Knicks fan, right? So I still watch them as much as I can. They struck out in free agency as far as the major free agents that they really wanted. And so then they tried to piece it together with one-year contracts other than Randall, who they gave a 3-year contract. And I think what you try to do on teams, and it's so hard to do, is find your best player, then your next best player who can absolutely drive winning. So in New York, we've seen the great athletes who can drive winning, and no one begrudges them whatever they make. But when you get to a point where you're paying people and you're still not a good team, that's when the resentment over salary comes into play. And it's really no fault of the player. The player just takes what's offered to him and negotiates the best deal. And so, the Knicks, they traded Porzingis. That, to date, hasn't worked out. Dennis Smith Jr. Hasn't been a good player. And so it'll be whether they get draft picks, the draft picks that they got in that trade, they need to find a best player that can drive winning, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up because you just mentioned Porzingis. There was rumors flying around the New York City area that Porzingis didn't want to play with Kevin Durant. Did you ever hear anything like that? Because that, to me, seems crazy. Now, I think you mentioned when they struck out in free agency because there was hope around the Garden that they were going to get Kevin Durant. As a matter of fact, people were saying
a lot of hope. Yeah.
It's never a done deal, but it was looking fairly promising. Obviously, that horrible injury took place. And apparently, you know this a lot better than I do, but please help me out here. Kyrie Irving was part of that. They're good buddies, supposedly, so you sort of got the package deal. Is it true? Let's start with my first question. Is it true that Porzingis did not want to play on the same team as Kevin Durant because he wanted to be the man?
Well, I'd never heard that, but
okay. Well,
things do get in the way of, good teams. And ego is a part of the equation, but I have never heard that. And right now it's interesting, right? Because now Porzingis is playing with probably a top 4 or 5 player in the league, and Doncic, who's getting, and rightly so, heavy consideration for the MVP. But I do think dynamics between players, like you mentioned, Irving and Durant, are more in play now than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think a lot of this matters to them, who they play with. To me, it was absolutely shocking. And this is no disrespect to Brooklyn, but I was shocked myself when they both, or DeAndre Jordan, Irving, and Durant chose Brooklyn over Madison Square Garden. I never thought I'd ever see that.
I hear you.
Jeff, it's Patrick here. Let me first of all say I love you on TV. I miss seeing Kim, because I used to sit right behind her at the Knicks games when you were the coach. And those are the last glory days of the New York Knicks. But so give her my best, number one.
I will.
I know you guys are doing well down there in Houston, and you're a big Texans fan now. So I'm not going to hold that against you, at being, because I feel like you're a New Yorker. But every time that the Knick job opens, which happens often,
which it is right now,
which it is right now, and I'm just going to say that the reason I'm going to say it because I don't know if John. This might be one of the only times, Jeff, where I may be more outspoken than my brother, because he's buddies with Dolan. Okay, that's just everybody knows that. All right,
and he goes to the game.
Okay. Yeah, he's good buddies with Dolan. So when you said earlier that the Knicks well, hold on, let me finish. When the Knicks missed out on getting any big name free agents, we all know the reason why they missed out, and the reason is Dolan. Okay, so is the reason why I know your name's always thrown out there, Jeff, that you could be the next Knicks coach, and I know as a Knicks fan, I'm as big.
No, he's not going to answer this.
I know he's not, but.
Why are you asking that?
No, I am going to answer that.
Good.
Okay, good. Because let me ask you:
are you not going to be the Knicks coach because of James Dolan? Is what he's about to ask.
No, I listen. I think there's a many layers to that question, but I think to start with, I don't believe players are not coming because of Jim Dolan. I don't.
Okay.
I do think there's.
Are you not coming because of Jim Dolan?
No, I've never gotten offered the job.
Okay.
So, other than when I had it when I was there, but I do think there's a perception that the Knicks aren't ready to win right now, and I think because of the way players are judged by championships or bust now, where it didn't used to be. Like Stockton and Malone could have had great careers, and they were thought of as the these great legendary players, even though they never won a championship. But in today's media frenzy, it's if you won a championship, you're great, and if you didn't, what you accomplished is diminished. And I think the reason right now that they have been unable to attract free agents is because the free agents don't believe they're poised to win at the level of championship level. Now, all it takes is one person to say yes to the Knicks, the right player, or to draft the right player. That can be your best player, and you can build around. And then I think the rest of the free agents will come. When I worked for Jim Dolan, I have to say, what I read now is not the same as when I worked there. When I worked there, I had Dave Checketts as a buffer, so it wasn't like I had a lot of contact with Mr. Dolan, but I know this. He wanted to win, and he gave us the resources necessary to win. And for me as a coach, that's all I wanted. I wanted a chance to win, and you have to have the resources to win.
So in other words, then, if we read, I don't even know if we're reading between the lines, but you just mentioned you can turn it around with one player, and I believe the Lakers would be a perfect example of that because they got LeBron, and I believe this is a historic franchise, obviously, and had all, Kareem and Magic and you can go on. And then they had, I believe, 5 years in a row they didn't make the playoffs. They were in the doldrums. Their record was almost as bad as the Knicks. It was that bad. The Knicks have the worst record in the league the last 5 or 6 years, I believe.
Fourth worst this year at the moment.
Is that all? Oh,
better than you thought.
And so then LeBron came, and look at the difference. So that's obviously they were banking on Kevin Durant, or a healthy Kevin Durant.
And LeBron basically took sort of half the year off last year, preparing to then get. Obviously now they've got Davis, so now they're legit contender.
You got the Madison Square Garden, and I admit I'm biased. The greatest city in the world that would make basketball even bigger than it already is. Why can't they get these guys? I don't understand. Help me out here, Jeff.
No, I think it's because players right now are reluctant to get on the ground floor of a rebuild. When LeBron went to L.A., they had some trade assets and some young players that he knew that eventually they could, because he was sharing an agent with Anthony Davis, right? He really felt confident that they were able to take these trade chips and parlay it into, if not Anthony Davis, an Anthony Davis-like player. I think, again, it starts with convincing one guy or drafting one guy. Think about it. Houston was also stuck. They were still a playoff team, but they were in that 42 to 44 win range. And then they traded for James Harden, the sixth man of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And what happened? He blew up. He's the right guy. And now they've been in the hunt since he's been here. And so it takes, these players are hard to acquire, but without them, you can be hard playing. You can, try hard. You can be a playoff team, but you can't compete for it all unless you get the right best player to build around. And that's not just talent. That's having the right drive and the right amount of sacrifice to help others play well. And so, like I said, those guys are hard to find, but that's the mission that the Knicks have to be on.
Patrick and John McEnroe here sitting in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. At Progressive, they're making things even easier. They'll help you bundle your home and car insurance together so you can save on both. Learn more at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Jeff, I feel like we could go on for like an hour with you, but let me ask you this. Forgetting about the Knicks, and obviously I know for a fact that our bosses at ESPN don't want you ever to leave because you're awesome on TV. But that itch to be a coach again, is it still there?
I was very fortunate the last 3 years to coach with USA Basketball and to help us qualify for the World Cup and then be a part of Greg Popovich's staff last year in the World Cup. And I wouldn't say it gave me the itch again because it never went away, but it did remind me of how much I enjoyed the competition and camaraderie of being with a team. And, along the way, the last few years, I've had opportunities that I didn't feel was the right fit for me. And then there was other jobs out there that I thought was the right fit for me, but the teams didn't feel the same way. So it just hasn't quite worked out. And like you said, I have a great job that I have right now, so you can be a little bit more selective, and I'm enjoying what I do. But yeah, there are times where I certainly miss, the competition and camaraderie that can't be recreated on TV.
Wait for a John Gruden type deal. He got the 10-year deal
right.
When he went back to the Raiders. Did pretty well. Who do you think's better team right now, Jeff? The Clippers or the Lakers?
I think the Lakers right now are playing better and more consistent. I think the Clippers have the greater upside to grow into. I think I'll be really interested to see if the Lakers, what they do around the trade deadline or what they do in the waiver pickup. Same with the Clippers, but I just don't think the Clippers have as much need. I think because of Leonard sitting out a lot, Paul George missing games, they haven't really come together yet, but I think they have the best talent in the NBA. I think they have great bench production. They have Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell off the bench. So I think they are really a gifted team. But right now, I think the Lakers and the Bucks have established a level of consistency that other teams are chasing.
Are you old school, like the way LeBron plays? If I'm healthy, I'm playing every game, or are you starting to evolve? I'm assuming you're old school, but I would
say devolved. I wouldn't actually say it's a positive.
Yeah.
Listen.
Well, it was your buddy Popovich that started it, right? You just mentioned.
So. But he did it with older, like when he had Duncan and Ginobili and Parker, that's when it came into being. And now we have 20-year-olds resting, because they can't play 2 games in a row. To me, it's far different.
Yeah, that drives me crazy. Last thing, Jeff, before I let you go, I appreciate all the time. If Roger Federer were a basketball player, who would he be?
Who would he be? Gosh, I got to.
Well, you don't have a lot of time. You got 10 seconds.
Who's the most consistent NBA player? I got to think.
Okay, you got
LeBron.
5 seconds.
He got to
John said. I did John for football. He said it was Tom Brady in football. So who would it be in basketball?
Tom Brady.
Now it could be.
But now
LeBron is the good one. I think he's more stoic. So I would go with Leonard, or I would go with. I'm going to go with Kawhi Leonard.
All right. We appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for all the time.
Take care, guys.
All the best,
Talk
Jeff.
to you later. We all love a night out, whether it's seeing our favorite band in person or being there in the crowd to cheer on our favorite team. Vivid Seats is the top source for tickets for all the live events you want to go to. To make things even better, Vivid Seats now has a loyalty program that allows fans to earn credit back. All you need to do is download the Vivid Seats app to purchase tickets and start earning today. Get out to the biggest concerts, games, the hottest theater shows, and more. Download the app and join the Vivid Seats Rewards Loyalty Program today. McEnroe Brothers here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Back after this.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Hour number 2 of our radio program, simulcast as well on ESPN News. It's a Stephen A. Smith Show. John and Patrick McEnroe here as we get set for hour number 2 of the program. And we've got Damian Woody coming up momentarily, Howard Bryant at 2:30, and then Craig Tiley from Tennis Australia to fill us in on preparations as we'll get set to head down under about a week from now for the first major of the year in tennis. But, of course, the NFL in full swing at the moment, John, as we've got 4 quarterfinal games, as you call them, coming up. Most NFL people call them the division playoffs. Well, we'll go with yours in the quarterfinals.
What's great about football, among other things, is that they only play 1 game a week. So it's one of the few sports where you don't get a whole lot of chances. I mean, you're playing 16 games a year. The preseason, that doesn't count. For half the time, they don't even play. And then you hope to play 3 or 4 maximum playoff games. So, and despite the minimal amount of games they actually play, the impact and the damage that does to you physically, you get why just seeing them, getting to know some of these guys over here, being there on the field a few times. I've been lucky enough. I was at the game, Patrick, in
Foxborough.
Well, that was last week, but I'm going back like 30 years or more when the Bears won, that great Bears team.
Oh, right.
Buddy of mine was a wide receiver for the Bears, and he invited me when the Giants played the Bears, a playoff game where the second half they checked and it was 17 below 0.
Was that Kenny Marjoram? Was that your buddy?
Ken Marjoram?
Who played it? He was a wide receiver at Stanford.
Wide receiver,
That's how we knew him.
First team all. I mean, an all. Was it all college? The first team
all Pac-10.
I think it was all
for the entire college,
entire country. He was in the same draft as Lawrence Taylor. So
okay.
But the point is that these guys play in unbelievably difficult conditions. It can be extremely hot. It can be extremely cold. It can be raining. It can be snowing. We can go on. And then they're battling each other because we're sitting there going, we're tough, man. Those tennis guys, we play 7 matches in 2 weeks, and we play 5 matches sometimes or 6 matches in a tournament. And we do play in extreme heat, which is difficult when we grew up here and go down to Australia, and it'd be like, wow, you talk about
that's some
furnace.
Serious heat.
And now it's even worse because of what's going on. But,
well, we've got someone here on the line with us who knows a little bit about football, playoff football, and particularly Super Bowl football as well. And that's the one and only Damian Woody. You're on with the McEnroe brothers. Damian, how are you?
I'm good, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. Obviously, the big story, one of the big stories certainly was the Tennessee's upset of your old team, the Patriots, and your old teammate in one Tom Brady. So my first question to you, Damian, is: will Tom Brady be back in a Pats uniform next year?
That might be the biggest story of the off season. But if you just follow the breadcrumbs and just hear the whispers in New England. My gut tells me he does not come back to the New England Patriots next year.
Wow.
That he'll be playing in 2020 with another organization, as crazy as it sounds. And when you look at Tom Brady in this whole situation, this is the first time that Tom Brady has ever been a free agent.
So let me ask you this, Damian. Do you think this is Brady's decision, or is it a Belichick decision? I mean, you've been in that locker room. You know the dynamic that exists. Obviously, there seemed like there was a little tension early this year. Who knows? But since you're saying you think it's
all three of them,
who's the main decision maker that Brady's leaving?
Well, listen, with a decision like that, there's a lot of different parties that's going to come into play. Obviously, Tom has, he has a situation where he can't be franchise tagged. So he's going to be he controlled the cards in this situation. Obviously, Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, he's going to play a big part in the situation. Coach Belichick, what does he want the future to look like post Tom Brady? He's going to have some say in it. And, for a lot of people out there that need to understand, Tom Brady's family is going to play a huge role in this. Giselle is going to play a huge role in this whole situation. So it's not just one person. It's going to be a lot of people that's going to be involved in ultimately what Tom decides to do moving forward.
Miami here, good weather, maybe
California,
LA or Miami. That would seem to be the two. You played, I noticed, Damian, your first 5 years of your career, I believe, was with New England. And then you played 4 for Detroit and 4 with the Jets, excuse me. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played 4 with the Lions, and then my last 3 years with the New York Jets.
And what happened when you left New England? Was that your doing? I don't recall that. Were you?
I was a free agent, and I just I was the top free agent that year, and I got offered a really good contract by the Detroit Lions, and I decided to move on. But listen, when you're able to win 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. Those relationships last forever, in the locker room, the organization. So, like I've always told people, I'm eternally grateful for everything that happened when I was with the Patriots.
Did you go to Belichick when you got that offer from Detroit and say, hey, listen, Bill, I'd love to stay here, but could you match that offer? Apparently Matt Rule did with Carolina.
That worked out well for him.
He called the Giants.
No,
he called the Giants. He said, if you match the offer, I'll get on the plane, apparently. That's what I've heard. And if not, I'm signing this 7-year, $60 million. What about you?
Yeah, you know what? What happened, with me was going into my last year in New England, we almost came to an agreement, but we just couldn't squeak it out, so we decided to put it off until we decided to revisit after the season. But by the time after the season came, basically Coach Belichick and company, they knew that with me becoming a free agent, they were probably going to be priced out. And once I hit free agency, I did, come back to the Patriots with the offer that I got with the Lions, and I knew that it just wasn't going to happen. And ultimately, I went on and signed with the Detroit Lions, but that's just the way it goes in free agency.
Well, good on you for getting the dough, and you got as you said, you got your Super Bowl ring, so you accomplished that, and
Pro Bowler.
The goal is to get paid and to make money.
But let me ask him a question concerning last one at the Patriots, but it also talked to the Titans. I happened to be the first time I ever went to Gillette Stadium to see that game last week, and it appeared that the offensive line of the Titans manhandled the defensive line and the defense of the Patriots, which I believe was considered one of the best in the league. Do you think there's a chance that they could do that against Kansas City in the next in the matchup in a couple days?
Well, listen, if you're referring to the Baltimore Ravens, listen.
Oh, Baltimore. I'm sorry, Baltimore.
Yeah, it's fine. Listen, Baltimore and Tennessee are similar. They're built similar. They're very similar teams. Obviously, different style quarterbacks and the things they do. But the one thing that both teams want to do is they want to control the tempo of the game. They want to run the football first and foremost, control the clock, and both of those teams, they do it very well. They play good defense. They run the ball. They try to limit the turnovers. So these teams kind of mirror each other a little bit. I think the biggest question in this game, can the Tennessee Titans put the Baltimore Ravens behind? Baltimore has never been in a situation this year where they've been playing from behind. And I think that's going to be the real key to this game, because if you put the Baltimore Ravens behind and make Lamar Jackson just throw the ball, that's the question that I think a lot of people want to see if Baltimore can answer that question.
Most people are saying, Damian, that it's Seattle that's got the best chance of winning as a road team. Would you agree with that? Of the four games.
You know what? I don't know about that, but here's what I will say. I will say this. Russell Wilson is 8-1 on the road this year.
That's pretty good.
8-1. You know, it is very, very hard to win on the road in the National Football League, and Russell Wilson is 8-1, and he's going to Green Bay. He played college football at Wisconsin, so that'll be kind of a homecoming of sorts. And anytime you have Russell Wilson at quarterback, you're going to have a shot every single week. So it's going to be a great game. I have questions about Seattle's defense, but when you have Russell Wilson, anything's possible.
Damian, we talked about this in the first hour. As a final question, do you look – you're an ex-football player and a football fan. Do you look at Lamar Jackson and I get worried that if he keeps this up, that he's going to get hurt trying to play the way he plays. I mean, it's been phenomenal this year. He's going to win the MVP. But you look at other guys, his backup, for example. You could go down the list of quarterbacks that have shorter careers because they're trying to run it this much. What do you think?
Well, here's a couple things. One, when you watch Lamar Jackson play, he doesn't take a lot of big hits. He does a really good job of protecting himself and getting on the ground when he's supposed to. So that's number one. And number two, that's a really good question that you threw out there. But I always tell people, if you can have a player like Lamar Jackson and you can squeeze out a Super Bowl or two in a shorter career, is it worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it. If you're able to win a world championship or maybe a couple world championships, but your quarterback might not play, 12 or 15 years, as opposed to maybe a quote unquote traditional quarterback, I'll take that trade-off any day of the week.
Now, listen, Damian, as a Jet fan over here, I wish you were still in that Jet uniform, excuse me, because we could use you. But you're doing one heck of a job for us at ESPN. Keep up the great work, and we appreciate you coming on with us.
Thanks a lot, guys. You guys have a good one.
Take care. Damian Woody, everyone, reminding you that if you love Nature Valley sweet and salty bars, you'll love the new sweet and salty minis. It's all the indulgent, savory goodness now in a smaller size. And at 100 calories, snacking has never, ever been so sweet. Patrick and John McEnroe here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. And I want you to think about that question that I asked to Damian. I want to ask you out there. You can call us in at 1-888-729-3776. Who's got the best chance, road team, to pull the upset this weekend in the NFL Divisional playoffs? That's next when we come back.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
And not too many people sitting out there today. It's nice and clear, but very chilly here in New York City. Patrick and John McEnroe here filling in for Stephen A. Smith on his radio program. When it comes to hiring, you do not have time to waste. You need to get to your short list of qualified candidates, and you need to do it fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Your time is precious. Let Indeed help you get to your short list of qualified candidates and discover why more than 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. That's Indeed.com/hire.
You going to send that Indeed thing to the Cleveland Browns? Slash their candidates?
Yeah,
when are they meeting with Josh? I'm assuming they're meeting with Josh.
That's
McDaniels.
tomorrow, apparently.
Tomorrow.
We might want to send them continue to send them the Rooney rule, because we just heard in that tease, and we're going to hear
a lot of guys that would be chomping at the bit, get their chance, and could be extremely successful. Let's hope
Marvin Lewis got interviewed.
Well, he at least was a head coach for 10 years, but there's been a lot of guys that never gotten a chance.
Eric Bieniemy, who's the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, he's been.
And also,
his name's been dabbled about.
It seems unfair, I've got to say, for a guy like Bieniemy, for example, who's you can't talk to these guys until the team's out of it. Well, meanwhile, other teams want to hire guys, right? So he gets burned, in essence, because his team is good. I mean, shouldn't he be allowed to talk to people before this?
I think they're allowed. I think they're allowed to interview. It depends on the team, I believe. But I think they are allowed to by the NFL.
I guess the problem is because it's different in college. A college coach can take a job in the pros and continue to finish the year out, like they could coach, in the bowl game, right? But you can't do that. See, the problem would be, I guess, if he was hired as the Cleveland Browns coach, although they're not in the playoffs, so I'm not sure why it matters. Then he, would he leave before the season end, or would he finish the season?
No, he'd have to finish the season. But your point is a good one. I mean, Jerry Jones obviously had McCarthy in his sights. Okay, when he was debating whether to get rid of Jason Garrett, which he eventually did, it was pretty obvious how quickly it happened. So he interviewed Marvin Lewis. So there's been some pushback that was just done because of the Rooney rule, that he wasn't that interested in actually hiring Marvin Lewis, but that McCarthy was his guy. So to your point,
well, you can't blame him if he wants to. I mean, that's the other issue. We don't know the answer to that, right? You don't know what he was thinking.
No, you don't know. But you know that
he thought he'd lose McCarthy if McCarthy talked to some other team.
To the Giants. But to your point, it was obvious that he wanted to get the coach in place as soon as possible. To start preparing.
Why did he hang Jason Garrett out to dry for a couple of weeks then?
He wanted to handle it delicately. He's been there for a long time. Well, time to go to some calls right now at 1-888-SAY-ESPN. Let's go to Robinson. Wants to talk about who he thinks has the best on line one. Oh, Minnie, you're on with the McEnroe brothers here. Who's got the best chance to win on the road this weekend?
Hey, how you guys doing? It's a privilege and an honor to speak to you guys. I just quickly, and you can just give me your take. This is Manny from Pennsylvania. Just want to get your take real quick. Big Giants fan, but just want to. My guess would be, I would say Seattle, because the way Russell Wilson has been playing lately. I mean, and with the huge contract in the offseason, I think Russell Wilson has another chance to take this Seattle team all the way to the Super Bowl once again. And also, one other quick point I wanted to make was, I know you guys cover tennis.
Yes, we do.
Which I'm a huge,
keep going.
Besides Roger Federer, because I'm a huge fan of Federer, who do you think would overtake him as far as, I guess, quote unquote, the next young guns? Would it be Nadal or would it be Djokovic? And I would like to get your take on that. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Right,
first of all, it was like, it should be another question. Who's the young guy most likely to win the Australian Open? How about some fresh blood?
I'm going to say Medvedev.
Okay. It's either Medvedev or Tsitsipas, and possibly one of the two Canadian guys, and you can, a couple of the Russian guys. Oh, Medvedev's Russian, but you think, okay, it's not that easy to break through. He just mentioned, who are the young guys, Nadal, because
they're in their 30s, right?
They're 5 and 6 years respectively younger than Federer.
I think his point may be to read between the lines of Manny's question, who has a better chance, this is a good question for us, to overtake Federer's 20 majors. Obviously, Nadal's got 19 and Djokovic has 16 at the moment.
Is it 16 or 17?
16.
16.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your answer to that would be what?
My answer to that would be Djokovic would be more likely to overtake, although both of them potentially could
likely
do it.
could, yeah.
If they stay healthy, they both will. But that's something that we'll know very soon in the next year or two.
Yeah, we'll be.
And then the most I like the fact that Russell Wilson's going up to play Green Bay, and he played college football at the University of Wisconsin. So he's sort of, in a way, it's a bit of a homecoming. And I'll tell you, he's one of what is he, 5'10", 5'11"?
5'10", I believe, yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, he's one of the most incredible players in the NFL.
It used to be that if you were that height, there was no way that you could see the secondary and all the big guys putting their arms up. But because of his movement and because of his smarts, he's able to see the entire field and knows when to run and knows when to wing it.
You're talking about two absolutely elite, incredible quarterbacks that are going to be playing up there in a couple days.
Let's go to our man who's been on hold with us, Howard Bryant, who's an ESPN senior writer, big tennis fan. Howard, we know that as well. So since we were just talking a little tennis, we're going to get into football with you as well. But first of all, welcome. And who ends up with more majors, Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic? We're putting you right on the spot, Howard.
Right on the spot. I was actually going to put out a Twitter poll asking how many the big three were going to get this year: 0, 1 to 2, 3, or all 4. And if I had to bet myself,
one to 2.
I'm going to go 1 to 2. I'm going to go 1 to 2 as well. Even though I am really, really nervous about putting too much stock into post U.S. Open results, but boy, I'll tell you, I do think that these kids are ready to go.
Yeah, well, we're going to find out.
I hope you're right.
Shortly. By the way, a reminder to tune into the ESPN Daily Podcast, bringing you a deep dive into a single story from one of ESPN's hundreds of reporters, presented by Indeed. Download, subscribe, and review ESPN Daily, available wherever you enjoy your podcast. So, of course, we were just discussing, Howard, the Rooney Rule and what's been happening with, obviously, the coaching choices that have been going on, and obviously Marvin Lewis getting the interview, which seemed to be, just to legitimize or because they had to do the Rooney Rule. What I mean, you covered this stuff inside and out. You covered the Kaepernick story as well. But what's your take on where the NFL is at the moment with the Rooney Rule, and what if anything needs to change?
Well, I think it's all sort of silly in a lot of ways, simply because I don't mean silly as in trivial. I just mean it's all very much in line with where we are as a country and where we've always been. I mean, I've always sort of said, I think the biggest problem that we have, and sports really does sort of exemplify it in a lot of ways, is that it's one thing to be a statistical minority against being a cultural one. Black people are a statistical minority. We're 12.5% of the population, but we're not a cultural minority. We're culturally dominant. When you look at what the athletes do, you look at what the entertainers do. So we have a huge, huge place in the cultural lexicon. But when you start looking at the raw numbers, and when you look at who gets hired and who owns things and who's in control, we're not in that position. So now you get to a place of hiring executives, not merit, whether or not, who can run faster, John or Patrick in the 40? That makes perfect sense. Whoever runs faster is going to get that cornerback position or whatever.
I think I know the answer to that, by the way, but okay.
I hope you guys are still going to be playing doubles, though, this year.
We were training this morning.
Yeah, we were out there early this morning before the show.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
But, I really do feel like if you, I get in a lot of hot water because I said things like, if you are anti-big government, then you are inherently anti-black. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at the post-war United States, the federal government is the highest employer of black people, always has been. It's built the black middle class. And if you shrink that, you're shrinking the black opportunities. And I bring this up because statistically, for the last 75 years, private corporations are very reluctant to hire African Americans to high executive positions. And the NBA is no different, and the NFL is no different, and baseball is no different. The problem is that the workforce is so culturally dominant and culturally significant that we're expecting the front offices to be different than the front offices at IBM or Apple or whatever, and they're not. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the NFL, it really does mirror the rest of society. And so the question is, to your question, Patrick, what do you do about it? I think that I don't know what to do about it. I think that you really do. You can't. Can you force private industry to hire people they don't want to hire? No, you can't. So what you have to do is you have to assume, or you have to hope that people are willing to sell, and you need new leadership. You need more people with more money to make different decisions. And until you have the big money people to come in and buy into these industries, you're not going to see a lot of change. I mean, but look at the numbers. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are worth $5.5 billion. I mean, there aren't that many black people in the country to have that kind of money to buy into these industries. So when I see this stuff happening at the front office level, I'm not surprised at all. It simply reflects what this country is.
There's 32 teams in the NFL. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so four
African American coaches,
like head coaches. So that's 1/8, which is 12.5%, which is exactly what Howard said is the amount of the population of the African American community in the U.S.
But the players are 70% black. That's the problem.
Exactly. So I guess here's my that's what I was getting to. I look as an ex-player, and I say there are people capable of coaching. In tennis, I'll take tennis as an example, that never played the pro tour. You know, there could be minor league players or high college players that become great coaches. But I would trust more if you place the two together, someone who had some experience, some success, knew what it was like or knew what it took to succeed. I would like to have my cake and eat it too, which leads me to where you were headed, I think, which 75% of the players in the league right now are black. So why aren't they getting a much higher percentage at this stage? And I don't think there's a good answer that anyone can give.
Well, there is a good answer. The good answer is that the people who do the hiring want people that they feel comfortable with. They don't feel comfortable. They don't relate to the black workforce.
They relate to winning. I bet you they'd relate to winning more than they'd relate to the workforce, to me, if they were all of a sudden winning Super Bowls.
Yeah, but I don't think that they look at it that way. And I really don't think, and I know some people get on me for this. I had one of the owners of the San Francisco Giants call up when I said this. Winning doesn't come first to these guys anyway. Very few teams are trying to win first. They're trying to control first. I mean, if you're really trying to win first, you wouldn't have salary caps and all that stuff anyway. You'd be out there in full market American capitalism like we say we love, and we'd say, go out and get the best players and go win me some games. But that's not what the business is all about. They have different concerns. I think the biggest issue really is, once again, when you are hiring people, whether you're hiring people over at the McEnroe Academy or whether you're hiring people for the New England Patriots, are you grooming my replacement? Are you willing to groom someone to represent me? Are you willing to groom somebody black to represent me? And if that answer is still inherently no, then you're going to see the hiring practices that we see right now. Who are your successors? That's the question.
Patrick and John McEnroe here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, reminding you that Straight Talk Wireless runs on the same 4G LTE networks for up to half the cost. Get the unlimited plan with up to 25 gigs of high-speed data, then 2G for just $45 a month. No contract. Straight Talk Wireless, only at Walmart. Oh, I wonder, Howard, then what is, I mean, maybe you know this because that's a great point when you bring up the percentage of the population of the African Americans, and then when you look at the NFL, the NBA, which are just becoming bigger and bigger as businesses, as global entities. But when you look at the mainstream large companies in the country, do you have any idea what the percentage is there? John just said it's roughly 12% of head coaches in the NFL. What's the percentage that are in high executive positions at IBM and Google and Amazon, et cetera?
Well, working on a story on that as we speak, actually, and it's really interesting because it's more baseball related. Because when you look at baseball, one of the things that's happening now is that baseball front offices really are trying very, very hard to mirror Fortune 500 companies. They don't want what John had said earlier, which is the players to run the front offices anymore. They want Ivy Leaguers now, as we've seen with the analytics craze and all of that. And that creates more of a barrier to entry for a lot of people to get into front offices. And so when what you're really seeing is sports moving more because the money is just enormous. So they want these industries to be run as businesses. And John brought up a really good point, too, about having played the game. It's really an important thing when you're part of the workforce. Who are you going to listen to? Who do you respect? Can you do what I did? If you didn't do what I did, you got to have something real special for me to listen to you.
Well, so it must be. I'm looking at the NFL again for a second, and it was back in the day. They said, black players aren't smart enough to be quarterbacks, blah, blah, blah. And, that's why they didn't have any. But you could argue the best quarterbacks in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
You got Aaron Rodgers, yep. But you got 3 of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks. And that's, to me, has got to help down the road. Don't you think, Howard? Hopefully.
Well, you would think. And it goes back to that question once again of, are we doing what's being asked of us, and then what's the result of that? They used to, John, you're absolutely right. What did they used to say? The closer you are to the ball is where the brains are. So you had white centers, white middle linebackers, and then the speed guys on the outside. The further away from the ball, you didn't get jobs. But now you've got guys, you've got guys who are close to the ball. You've got Deshaun Watson and those guys under center. That's the nerve center of the sport. Can you read a defense? Are you, this is the brains part of the game. And so we will see. I'm not, really optimistic about it because I think that hiring is so much more about comfort than about intellect. It's about comfort. It's about who you feel like you can work with. Who do you enjoy talking to? Who do you feel like you can, you can have that sort of creative tension with and actually get things done. It doesn't produce winning. Look at Matt Patricia. He hasn't won. The connection between winning and intellect and comfort and all that, they're not the same. They're not the same at all. Otherwise, you would make completely different choices.
Well, listen, Howard, it's been awesome having you on. I feel smarter having had you on to discussing these topics, and thank you for doing it. And before we let you go,
we'll see you in Australia.
We'll hope.
No, you will not see me in Australia. I'm wondering when. That's the one I haven't done. I will see you in London or Indian Wells.
Well, we'll stay in touch via Twitter, et cetera, Howard, and we appreciate you coming on and educating us a bit. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right, that's Howard Bryant, senior writer for ESPN, does a tremendous job, and he is, in addition to knowing these topics extremely well, really loves. He's come out and watched us and the old guys doubles over the years, the last couple of years. Comes out and watch. So
we're taking him out to dinner. Okay,
absolutely.
Next time we see him.
ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance, with insurance for cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and commercial vehicles at 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and Progressive.com. We'll speak to our other buddy in the tennis world, Craig Tiley from Down Under. He's up early Friday morning, and he'll talk to us about preparations for the Australian Open with the bushfires going on in that country. That's coming up next year on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
All right, welcome back, everyone. John and Patrick McEnroe here as we get set to finish off our program here, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time here in New York City. Reminder to download the Vivid Seats app and enter the promo code ESPN25 at checkout to get 10% off your next order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. Well, half a full world away is the site of the first tennis major of the year, the Australian Open, and John and I will be heading down under, as they call it, in a little under a week's time. So we look forward to that every year. It's known throughout the tennis world as the Happy Slam because everybody's in a great mood. It's summer in Australia. They treat the players, the fans, the media incredibly well. And a big reason for that is a man who's on the line with us right now, Mr. Craig Tiley, who's the tournament director down under. And it's a Friday morning, very early Melbourne time, Craig. So we very much appreciate you coming on with us for a few minutes. It's John and Patrick McEnroe here.
Good morning. Well, actually, afternoon to you guys. No, it's good to be on the phone. We're looking forward to having you back down in Melbourne.
We hope we have woken you up, that you're not stressing over. But fill us in about what's going on down there, because we're obviously seeing the news and it looks pretty rough down there in Australia right now. Fill us in on what you're doing and what's happening in the Melbourne area right now.
Yeah, John, it has been pretty rough, and it's good to chat to you, Patrick, again. Really look forward to seeing you guys. But we've had, I mean, it was actually reported this morning with the devastation of these fires, which is incredible. Never in Australia have they been as horrific as they've been. People have lost their lives. I think there's over 250 million hectares have been destroyed, and that's the size of many European countries. And over 1 billion animals have died. So it's just astronomical. And as a result, in Melbourne and Sydney particularly, there's been a smoke haze. And so now, like previously when we had to worry about extreme weather, and we have a new measure now, and that's air quality. But the good news is that in those areas, the fireys, as we call them, the firefighters are getting a handle on the blazes, and the smoke is dissipating. And in the next day or two, it's expected to be fine for the rest of several weeks. But it's still something we've got to monitor every day. And we've been talking to the players and letting them know that it's not hazardous to be outside, although it can get to a position where it would be. And if it did, then we would suspend play like we do with extreme heat and go indoors and wait for it to lift, which it normally lifts pretty quickly. But it's a new dimension, a new dynamic, and really, running the Australian Open and welcoming everyone to Australia is secondary to some of the experiences all the experiences that people are going through right now in this country.
I understand that I believe it was Australian rules football, or perhaps it was rugby, that there was some type of smoke alarm that went off in Melbourne, which is where the tennis events can be played. Is that true? And if so, does that mean that the air quality was very poor the other day?
Yeah, well, actually, there's a measure of an index. I've had to become upskilled pretty quickly over the last two weeks on how you measure air quality and what it's all about and what it does. And I never thought I'd have to do that, but now you do. But yeah, in some cases where you get pretty thick smoke, it has triggered some of the alarms, some of the outdoor alarms. But the good news is in Melbourne, we haven't yet had a day where the air quality is unhealthy or hazardous. In Sydney, they did about 3 weeks ago. They had a day of that, but Sydney's been pretty good since then. But last night I flew down from the northern part of Australia in Brisbane and flew down to Melbourne. And when you're flying over the fires, you look at the cloud. It creates its own weather pattern. It's an amazing thing, and they're so intense and they're so big. The flames move at over 150 miles per hour, and so yeah, it's the speed of them is incredible.
So you are
the positive has been.
Sorry, Craig. So you're prepared. Obviously, I mean, many fans here don't know, as we do, that you guys in Australia have been ahead of the curve for many years with the retractable roofs, and you've got 3 courts now that you can play indoors, so to speak. Or if this issue were to come up, have there been any? Because I was reading that you were also contemplating maybe using the indoor courts that you have there for some matches. Is that something that you envision possibly happening?
Absolutely, that is our last case scenario, and if we get stuck in that where the air quality is not healthy enough to be outside, we've got 11 indoor courts where we can continue the Australian Open inside. Obviously, we don't want to do that, but
right.
The one thing we've learned with the smoke haze, it doesn't stay around for long. So you may have it for a few hours or half a day, and then it lifts. So if it was going to be a disruption, it would be a short one. So we don't really expect to go indoors at all. We will use our 3 stadiums, which we have a controlled air environment in those, and just close the roof and collectively in those stadiums we can get 35,000 people in. So, but we don't expect to go to that. What the forecast has been for the fires and how they've moved sort of away has been helpful. And we don't expect to be in that position. But we've been ready for anything and everything, and we've learned. I don't know what's next. Extreme heat, rain,
right.
Now air quality. But we've certainly had it all thrown at us.
Male players screaming at umpires.
Imagine that.
A thing of the past.
Craig, we really appreciate you coming on with us. Okay, thanks for getting up early, and we're all happy in the tennis world that you're in charge, and we know it's going to be another very successful
We look forward
event.
to seeing you down there, Craig, next week.
Take care.
It'll be fun. Look forward to seeing you guys. It's always good having you, and it's going to be a great event. We've got all the challenges, but it'll be fun.
All right, thanks a lot. That's Craig Tiley, everyone, the tournament director at the Australian Open. And we will head down there next week. We appreciate the opportunity to come here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Thanks to the man himself.
Great work.
Great
Patrick.
job by you.
Thanks for making me look reasonably decent.
We had a lot of fun. We talked NFL. We had thanks to our guest today, Damian Howard Bryant, Jeff Van Gundy, and, of course, Craig Tiley. And we can't forget our buddy Chris Fowler, who helped us out the other day. So look forward to the weekend of games at the NFL and the college football championship one as well. We'll see you all, our tennis fans, from Down Under. Our coverage starts there on the 20th.